Hey there, Internet Drifters. So we have come back from playing RimWorld, and now we are not playing RimWorld. What we're doing here is we're taking the first video and all the things that happened. I have written down notes about what happened in video 1, and we're now going to write about it. So up here I've got notes on the basic stuff, like what is behind the scenes. He wakes up in a desert, he has a bad back, he's nudist, ascetic, however you say that word. He's got no burning passions, but he's got a little bit of interest in some things, and he's kind of okay at construction and cooking. Very basic at medical, but pretty much crap at everything else. So those are all the things that kind of form our character. And the reason, if you're wondering, I didn't write down any of the proper nouns from the game that I actually played, it's because those are generated by Ludion and technically are copyrighted by Ludion. I don't know that they would actually do anything if you used them necessarily, but they might. Most companies that have a story that you might write something derivative, they're going to be copyrighted. So if you feel inspired by a piece of work to write a fanfic, for instance, you can't really do anything with that. I mean, you can post it for people to read for free and be like, oh, look at what I can do, but it's not going to be, profitable. If you're looking to make money off of writing, which a lot of people do, you're going to need to learn how to come up with that stuff on your own. A lot of what they give me in RimWorld, I'm going to have to, set that aside and say, well, that's nice. That's stuff I need for playing the game, but when it comes to writing, I should be able to come up with that stuff on my own. For instance, I also didn't put any of the factions. Well, we didn't come across any of the factions in video 1 anyway, so it's not really a big deal. But even if we did, I would still want to come up with my own name for them, maybe even my own backstories, maybe even decide where they're going to be outposted in relation to my outpost, and not necessarily go by exactly what happens in the game. Again, all in the name of creativity and not having to deal with copyright infringement. So right now we have nothing. We have this blank sheet of paper and a bunch of notes. Oh, and also, by the way, the music in the background, I would have loved for it to be RimWorld music. I'm not really sure how copyright works with the music, so I'm not doing that. But if I were doing this on my own without recording it, I'd probably want to have the RimWorld music playing while I did this so that it gave me sort of that same feel, kind of tune back into that world, that area, and the memories of having played it. Links will be in the description, and I might put another attribution at the end of the video. Okay, we'll call this Chapter 1, just because, why not? I don't know that it'll be a full chapter, or it might be more than one chapter, but it doesn't really matter. We can change that later. That just kind of gets us in the mode of, this is now what we're doing. We are writing this. First thing he did was cut down a few cacti. This sandstone rock that he found didn't actually happen in the game, obviously. Creative license while playing and editing the video. There was a lot of sandstone around him, and he was in the desert and everything, so how else is he cutting these damn cacti down, right? He's got to be using something, so it had to be some tool that he found or created while we weren't watching as gods of RimWorld. And so I'm going to go with, he found some really nice looking sharp sandstone rock that allowed him to cut down the cacti. Now here's where the hard part happens. Where do we begin? Because obviously the first thing that we did in the game was we cut down some cacti. Technically, I guess the first thing we did was we did all this stuff, chose where he shows up, checked out his personality traits and skills and everything. However, none of those things make for a good story, a good beginning. I mean, they're good story elements, but as far as the beginning goes, it's not really grabbing anyone. Like, woohoo, you cut down a few cacti, and this person doesn't really seem very interesting. He's got no burning passions. He's a little nudist, so like maybe that's kind of like, partially interesting. But nothing really that screams, hey, I really want to read this. So what are we going to use as our beginning hook, or what draws people into even caring enough to read about this story? I'm going to take a little bit of time, and I'm going to consider where to begin. Okay, the first thing that comes to mind is beginning at him cutting him cutting a cactus. Could be first or last. I could see how cutting a cactus could be, with a sandstone, could be kind of difficult, let's say. And that could be an emotional triumph to get through the first, or maybe an emotional struggle just even starting on the first cactus. And I mean, because he had like 0 plant skill, so this was his first real battle against nature ever in his life. So cutting down that cactus probably was a big deal. That's a decent beginning. That's some place I can draw from to really grip the reader into an emotional situation where they're like, wow, I never really thought about this. This is ridiculous. I need to read more. Why is he even doing this? Another one I could start is before the desert. But that gets really hairy because I don't know if I want to really go into a before story. Like, he has one, obviously, but maybe that's something that we can develop through the telling, because I don't want to come up with it all right now. And it kind of gets a little campy and cheesy when you feel like you're put on the spot to kind of info dump all this stuff at the very beginning of why he's there. But if you leave that as sort of a, what is he doing there? Then that makes the reader think, what is he doing there? And then they want to read on to see if that question is ever answered. Sometimes it's not. If you're good at it, you can write a story that those questions that compel the reader to continue reading aren't answered, but nobody cares at the end because you write it into a situation where those questions no longer matter. It's irrelevant why he was there. I don't know that I'm that good of a writer, but I do think I can do the reveal over time thing and not quite so much the info dump of before the desert. So I'm going to erase this because I'm going to begin at him cutting that first cactus, whatever. My first question is, what is he doing? He's cutting the first cactus, but what is the moment that he's doing it in? I put myself in the position of that man, which we don't even have a name for yet. And I ask myself, where is he in space and time, in the desert, probably sweating, not quite hungry yet, because if it's his first cactus, which that's what I'm going to go with, then he's really just gotten started. He's naked, probably getting sweaty and dirty, and there's nothing but sand to stick to him to cover that. So he's going to be really uncomfortable. So what he's going to do is he's going to wipe the sweat off his forehead. And we will call him Andre. And again, I said there was sand. He felt the sand. That's tropey. Dig into his flesh. Yeah, I like the flesh better than skin. Okay, I don't like that sentence already, but we will go with it because first drafts are always going to be kind of like, I could do better, but you need to get it out and then come back and do the real finessing part. He wiped the sweat off his forehead. Oh, I didn't put his. It's not his at all. So this tells the reader he is doing some hard work. This tells the reader what work he's doing, or at least the subject of his work. So it kind of answers their natural question of why is he working? What is he doing that is making him sweat? And it also sets the scene a little bit and says, hey, there's sand, there's a cactus, maybe he's in the desert. Or he could be in a hardware store. Or, one of a million other different possibilities, but it gives people a range of possibilities for the location. So where do we go from here? Again, more illumination on what he's doing. Okay, so now we know that he is in the desert or some sandy area with a cactus, and he has a rock in his hand that he's been using a lot. And now I gave them a little thought bit, kind of providing a little bit of levity. Because, this is all like, everything is hard and terrible. And then he's like, yeah, this seemed like it was going to be a better idea than it actually ended up being. And that tells the reader, oh, okay, it's not that bad. It's bad, but it's not that bad, right? And it also kind of gives the character a little bit of personality, just a tiny bit peeking through here, like, maybe he doesn't think things through. Now I need to kind of close this paragraph and move on to the next thing. So I need a bridge from the scene that we just constructed to a new scene. It's probably still going to be the same basic scene, but it needs to be a sort of transition so that we can move the story forward and create a flow. I'm going to think. I'm going to think. And there's another bit of information about who he is and what he is doing. But it also neatly wraps up that little idea. And I have this whole iguana thing here, right? Sort of ends up being his antagonist. He's hungry and there's this iguana and it kind of starts with the iguana and ends right after he has cooked and eaten the iguana meat. I think I want to bring the iguana in pretty quick too, so that they're kind of characters together. I know that sentence doesn't seem very great, but as I said, first draft, we'll go with it. And I may never change these, I'm not really sure. But for right now, dusty green blob slithered out from the rocks. Because remember, RimWorld kind of starts out at the beginning of the day. So I'm going to assume that it's sort of morning time. The iguana would be going to look for its own food at this point. Now, I don't know much about iguanas. Let's be fair. There's always going to be things that's like, I don't know about that. And what I'm going to do is look it up. Iguana. So that's what it looks like. Kind of looks like a dragon a little bit. Dragony. They don't really look appetizing. But that's okay, because at this particular moment where we're writing, he's not hungry yet. It's still the beginning of the day. They're kind of small sometimes, but the ones on RimWorld are large, like 10 times the size of a normal one. They also, from what I noticed, seem to have kind of doofy claw hand things. And I say doofy because they just don't, they don't move them as exactly, as precisely as we move our fingers. So like they end up in these weird sort of positions that fingers don't normally get into. Because that would be weird. Ooh, that is a huge toe right there. Seems maybe they all have that big ass toe. Well, we will go back to okay, now I've written that and I already want to add something before here. So I felt like this needed to precede the "its claws dug at the sandstone." It seemed like an end of the paragraph sort of bit, and this seemed more of an immediate description sort of thing. And then we move on, because that's just really foreshadowing that this iguana is going to be a thing. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. He what? Right here, I know that he needs to move on to cutting down more cacti, because that's what we're doing. We haven't even really stopped or gotten past the very first note on our thing, but how is he going to carry cacti? They're pointy, they're spiky. So before he can do anything with it, he's going to have to strip the needles. And I don't know about you, but I've never seen a cactus actually double as wood. But we'll say it's possible that it could be a substitute for wood, and that, you know, when it's dry, it's no different. And now I have kind of given him a slight bond to the iguana. That he's watching it and he's like, well, what a silly little creature. Not really thinking anything of it. He doesn't bear it any ill will. And he's kind of, watching it as he does what he does. Now I need to push the story along because it's kind of dragging a little bit. Well, how am I going to sort of fast forward without it seeming unnatural or without it seeming rushed? Feel like there's something that needs to be a little slower to connect it to something quicker so that it balances. Ah, right. Rumbling tummy. Almost finished with the fast forwardy bit. Mead, not mead. Let's separate that. Come back to this. They're made of meat. Where am I going with this? Now we have a result. Now we have an emotional attachment to Andre and his struggle, and he has taken up the mantle to fight, to do what he needs to do to survive. At this point, I feel like the video has gone on pretty long, and we're only maybe halfway done with video 1 of the playthrough. So I'm going to end it here, and we will come back for a second video to finish the rest of this. I hope you enjoyed this little write with me sort of thing, and if you do, then hopefully I can make more of them. If you just like the Let's Plays, then just watch the Let's Plays, and I enjoy making them too. So let me know in the comments, and I will see you guys next time.